guest today is a great entrepreneur, personal friend, a media mogul, and a highly sought-after executive performance coach with over 25 years experience helping companies in pharmaceutical, automotive, oil and gas, hospitality, and banking industries. He's a strategic decision maker. Darren has worked for a British military, leading teams of frontline military operations, which I love to know more about, calming chaotic situations and motivating them to achieve optimum performance and results. Darren is the CEO and founder of Unique Consulting, a Dubai-based firm based on helping business owners create result-driven company cultures and harness the leadership potential available within their workforce. Here's what I've been dreading on saying. No, but I'll try to avoid it. He is also the regional director of Alpha Group International, an organization that provides peer-to-peer executive boards with the sole aim of helping business managers and entrepreneurs in doubling the value of their companies within 2 to 3 years. Darren is a master negotiator, talent mentor, radio presenter, exceptional learning facilitator, to name a few, and has advised many government entities, multinational companies, and startups on matters of leadership, negotiation, and talent development. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our guest today, Darren Carrington. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you, Dariush.
Although I wrote this, I did a terrible job of reading it. So, putting this aside, really welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here. I know you're extremely busy.
Great
How's
to be
family?
here. Yeah, wonderful, thank you. A few blips at the moment, but essentially we're good.
But you're a fighter, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The whole positive outlook on things, that's how we live our lives now. And this is just a blip. I don't know how it came about, but my wife is going through some challenging times at the moment with some surgery happening next week, but it's all good. It's all very positive.
I wasn't actually sure. I wanted to bring it up, and I was going to ask you how your wife is, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to go public with this. But I'm so proud of you. I think one of the reasons I like you very, very much, and we connected when we first met, is your positive outlook.
I think I've always been positive. I didn't realise how positive I was from a very young age, but I've always been looking at the glass half full perspective, a very sort of growth mindset.
Always at a young age? I know you may have recognised that you're a positive guy. Were you always positive? Because that's one of the questions I always ask. Is it in your DNA?
I don't know if it's in my DNA. My parents were both lovely people. I lost them many, many years ago, but they were both lovely people, and they sort of instilled core values, and who I am today, I think, grew out of those values and ethics. And I was very ill as a child. I was taken away from my mum the day I was born. I had gastroenteritis, so I nearly.
What does that mean? What is it?
It's basically a stomach disorder. So I was born with that, and I was vomiting, and I was losing stuff from both ends. From the day old.
Were you the first child?
No, my sister was the first. So I was separated from my mum. And then all the way through my sort of childhood life, all I could really remember was going back and forth to hospitals. I developed a kidney problem, and that was really very inhibiting through my school years.
You've been a fighter since the day you were born.
Yeah, and I think that's what sort of really prompted that whole positive outlook, because I was always a smiley kid. Whatever was going on, I was always happy and smiley, and I think that's sort of reinforced who I am today, really.
So do you think at home your mum kept talking to you about positivity and being strong? Is that what you think it was? Because you said that they enforced positivity, your parents.
Yeah.
Were they self-employed? Were they employees? Did they read books? What did they know about being positive?
My dad, ex-forces, went in, did his apprenticeship in the printing industry, and he was in the print industry all his life. I don't think he was ever aware of what positivity is in the way we know it today, and that whole sort of thinking and acting as if the reality is it's all positive. I don't think that was a conscious thing. I think it was just something that was quite natural.
But they were similar in personality?
Yeah, very much so.
How did they meet?
Through work. They worked together.
In the printing business?
In the printing industry, yeah.
Amazing.
My mum was from Ireland. She came over when she was very, very young, I think around about 14, and she was doing all sorts of odd jobs, and she was working in the same...
From Ireland to UK?
From Ireland to UK.
Whereabouts in UK?
Dublin. Okay. She came from Dublin.
From Dublin to?
The Cricklewood area, so it's northwest London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. South of it.
Down south. Yeah, down south.
Amazing. And was that where you were born?
I was born in northwest London. I was born in Kingsbury, northwest London.
Right.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So how long were you in the UK?
all my life up until 15 years ago, really. So I worked with an organisation called BFBS, British Forces Broadcasting Service, and we provided...
Did you go into that because of your father, because he was in the forces?
No, I went into it because I saw such a unique opportunity to get involved in doing radio, which was in my veins, doing radio for an audience that would really appreciate what you did and where you did it and how you did it. So it was something that, it wasn't a conscious decision. I just saw an opportunity and I pursued that opportunity.
So it was a radio channel just for the forces?
Yeah.
All over the world?
All over the world.
Every base there is. And
if you think about the movie Good Morning Vietnam,
yes,
Robin Williams.
That was you. The UK version.
Yeah, but we were really sort of like kicking it. We were high tech. We had the first digital studios in the UK, long before any commercial radio stations had them. And we provided radio and TV services to the British forces all over the world.
And what was the audience? How many numbers?
The British military across the whole UK.
You don't think British military is more than a million, really? I would have thought maybe a couple 100,000.
No.
Their families, their wives, their
exactly.
kids.
So, for instance, we had a UK headquarters in Buckinghamshire, which was on a beautiful country estate. It's amazing. You go to work and you pull into this beautiful, glorious country estate, and you pull up outside of the main building. You go around the corner, you've got this massive satellite farm that will be pumping programs around the globe.
And from the outside, you could never tell.
No. It's amazing. And we were producing radio programs live and pre-recorded output for the military and their families all over the world, from east to west.
Yeah, what I find amazing is that in the UK, there's the NHS, National Health Service, but all the best equipment is bought by them first, and then the private clinics and private hospitals buy from them. Yeah. We don't actually appreciate how much the government spends on brand new equipment, high-tech equipment. So you had the first digital radio broadcasting.
Yeah. Literally, I'd go into the studio, and we have a term called hot seating. So what you would do, if you were changing your show, you would swap over during the news, and it would only have like 2 or 3 minutes for you to see the other person out, for you to get in and get set up. And when we introduced the whole digitized desks, you'd literally go in with like a credit card, you put it into the slot, that would come up with your voice settings on your microphone, you come up with the configuration for your mixing desk, and it's just personalized to what your preferences were. It's amazing.
How old were you then?
When I first got involved in radio, I started off at hospital radio.
Okay.
And I was, I think, 19, 20, I first got involved in hospital radio. And,
1920?
19 or 20.
Not
1920. Not in 1920.
I
started young, but not that young.
Amazing. So, and then you worked there full time in the hospital radio, or was it part time?
That was just voluntary. That was just going down once. I had a designated day that I would go down. It was on a Wednesday evening, and I'd go visit patients, collect their requests, and thinking about it, it's probably quite a cruel thing to do, because when people are in there, they're there for a specific reason. And we had the mindset of, we're coming to entertain you, keep your mind occupied off of what you're there for. A lot of people were in there for some very serious reasons, and they weren't really bothered about what was going on or off on the radio. So it was a service that I think was well received by many, but a lot it was, could have taken it or left it.
Sure. But you know what, if you cheered one person up, it was worth it.
Exactly.
So, and then how did you apply for a job in the army? The radio...
There was a magazine that we used to have in the UK. I was doing a lot of stuff on commercial radio in the UK.
So you were well known?
I was very active. I was working for Kear's, Capital and Radio 1 in London. I was doing a lot of stuff on the regional stations as well. So for the GWR network that had, a good following, and I was doing a lot of stuff for them. And I saw this magazine advert, and the radio magazine is just like a little fanzine magazine that would come out weekly. And I subscribed to it. And it was in industry news, gossip, long before anything that we see now on digital platforms.
Yes.
So I used to get it as well for looking at the job opportunities and seeing who's doing what and keeping a finger on the pulse, really. And I just saw this advert, and it was looking for quite a bizarre way of going in to work with the military, but it was just literally a short-term contract for 3 months to go in as what they called a technical operator. So you would be operating the studio controls for some of the presenters whilst they were closing down the London studios and moving them to the Buckinghamshire studios. And I went in there. Loved
Not even as a presenter?
Not even as a presenter, but within 4 weeks of going in and doing this, what we call tech hopping in the trade, and I put a proposal together because at that time I was working for KISS. I was producing the dance chart on KISS FM in London, and I proposed to do a dance program, and they said, well, we've got dance covered. A couple of our guys in Cyprus are actually doing a weekly dance program, but one thing that we don't have is a drum and bass show. Okay, I can do drum and bass because working with KISS, I was producing Fabio and Groove Rider at KISS, so yeah, I could do drum and bass. So DC's drum and bass was born.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So within 4 weeks of working there, I managed to a show.
I guess now, if you get into the army or the radio, they'll do 1,000 different checks, background checks, and everything else. Did they do any of those days?
Absolutely, yeah.
They still did, yeah.
Well, not necessarily because we were a private company, but we were contracted by the MOD, Ministry of Defence, to provide this service, and it was a long-standing. I mean, now I think we're talking about 70 years that we've had this. I still say we.
Yeah.
We had this service that we were providing, and it was everywhere they would go, we would go and follow them. But a lot of it was voluntary because a lot of it was going to areas that were deemed to be hostile environments. So you'd put yourself forward to volunteer to go to those, which I did.
So you travelled?
I travelled a lot, yeah. And only if you were travelling to...
Why would you want to travel when you got this beautiful studio? What, do the actual audience want you to be present locally? Do they help? Because I believe it helps the morale of the people.
It's a morale boost. Yeah. So, if, for instance, when I did I travelled all over the BFBS network, and some of it is beautiful. Like I was posted to Cyprus, what we call a nice sunshine posting. That's not really deemed to be hard work by any standard. But going to somewhere like Iraq or Bosnia or Kosovo, where things were still quite active at that time, it's stuff that when you go out there, that these guys, they're away from their families for 6 months.
Yes.
They might have 2 weeks, what they call R&R, in between, but they don't always get that. So 6 months is a long old stretch. So if you go out there and you visit and you sort of include them into what you're doing, they open up and they give you a lot more. So you get a lot of
live
content.
shows and things. Is
Absolutely,
that what you did?
yeah.
So all the troops will gather. Would the entertainers come? Because I know, like in the World War II, Bob Hope and stuff like this. So you'll have entertainers coming supporting the troops.
Well, BFBS was part of an organisation called SSVC. So there's the Services Sound and Vision Corporation. Right. So SSVC was the mothership, like a big umbrella. Then underneath that we had BFBS Radio, we had BFBS TV, we had the cinemas. So we'd have films being sent out to local cinemas all over the world. We'd have CSE, Combined Services Entertainment. So they would provide all of the live shows. So they would send out a full sound and lighting crew, a full 4 or 5 piece band, 3 or 4 comedians, and a dance troupe as well.
It's a proper business.
Absolutely, yeah. So when you think about Good Morning Vietnam, it's nothing like that. The concept is exactly the same, but the reality is very, very different.
Scale.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So how long did you do that for? That would have been in the early 90s, right?
I joined BFBS in 97.
Wow.
Yeah, I joined BFBS in 97.
And how long did you do this for?
I was with BFBS for just around about 12 years.
So when you said you actually were in the army...
I wasn't in the army. I wasn't in the army. I was a civilian.
I see.
Yeah,
but you witnessed things.
We got to go where they would go. And they always used to say, well, if they're here, it can't be that bad. Because we were civilians. But we had to go through specific training that would equip us to be prepared for going into hostile environments. So,
did you come across situations where you think, this is not for me? This is not for my eyes. This is not what I got paid to do.
Did I ever feel threatened? I came
in war zones and say your safety, your colleagues' safety.
Not so much safety in terms of direct threats or on a one-to-one. I was in Iraq on a Skype call to my wife, who was in Cyprus at that time, and I was in my what they call Corimex, so it's just like a converted cargo container.
Yeah.
And I heard this really weird noise that was going overhead, and it's a noise that I hadn't been familiar with. And it's really bizarre because when I first went there, I was having a brief from the outgoing station manager who said, right, he was going out the next day. Literally, I'm in one day, he's out the next day. So it was a really quick brief, and he was a very short attention spans type of person. So,
be quick, get it done with next.
Yeah. A lovely guy, but if you want the detail, forget it. You're not going to get it from him. So literally, we were talking, and there was an explosion, and I'm ready to hit the floor, and he just looked at his watch. And I said, "You've been here too long." He said, "No, I haven't." He said, "It's okay." I said, "What do you mean it's okay?" They would do controlled destinations at certain times of the day. So if it was happening at 1:15 or 1:45 the hour, you wouldn't have to run for cover, because still be vigilant, but essentially, it's a controlled destination.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I got into that whole way of doing things very quickly, and whenever I heard anything, I would no longer be jumping for my
And you
helmet and body
you
armor.
flew normal airlines, or you flew with the army, or with the troops?
Flew with the Royal Air Force.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, so going into Basra, my first experience of going into Basra International is really bizarre, because about 20 minutes outside of Basra, you're flying in by night.
Yes.
So they asked you to put on your body armour and your helmet, and they don't just dim
So
the
from
lights.
the outside, you look like a troop.
Yeah.
You look one of the troops.
Absolutely.
Right? You carry guns?
No. A couple of our presenters over the years asked if they could be issued, and they said no.
Yeah.
But yeah, so about 20 minutes out, they just not just dim the lights, they cut all of the lights on the inside the cabin, and we literally just almost like spiraled down into descent and touched the ground, and that was it. So quite a scary entry into Iraq. And
Did they always tell you where you were going to go, or you just ended up in countries not knowing where you were?
No, I always knew where I was going to go.
Always
Yeah, I didn't always know when I was coming back, but I always knew where I was going.
That's amazing. You need a strong relationship, don't you? You need a strong
Yeah,
partner
yeah.
to put up with all that.
Yeah.
So what made you leave?
A great question, and I still question today, if I hadn't have made that decision, which is really, really tough, if I hadn't have made that decision, would I be the person I am today? And I know the answer to that would be no. What BFBS prepared me for in so many different ways was amazing, and because it was such an amazing company, there were people that had been there for 25 or more years. So it got to the point, and there was a glass ceiling.
Yes.
And it was in 2007. I came back from our station in Decatur. So we had 3 stations across the island. I was based in Akrotiri, and I was the program director. Akrotiri is just below Limassol in Cyprus. And we had another station over in the east called Decatur on another base. We had another studio in Episcopi. So Akrotiri was the main station, and I went up to our Decatur station, visiting our team up there and seeing some of the audience. And I got back, and my boss said to me, "You've been posted to the Falkland Islands next year as station manager."
Wow.
And I'd been to the Falkland Islands, and it's an amazing place to visit,
Not to live.
and not to live. Especially when they couldn't guarantee whether it was going to be 2 or 3 years.
The winters are dreadful, no?
Yeah, and there are no trees down there, by the way.
Why is that? They
Because
cut them down.
No, they don't
trees
even
can't
grow.
survive.
They don't even grow because the wind is so harsh that as soon as they start to grow, they're blown right over. So it's an amazing place, but not for 2 or 3 years. So
How many troops do the UK have now in Falklands?
in the Falklands, I think there was between East and West Falkland. I think there was a total audience, a population of about 4,500. And now that's
amazing.
military and civilians.
Sure.
Across 2 islands.
And I get Gibraltar. Why are the British in Falklands now? What purpose does it serve in the middle of nowhere in South America? I don't have an opinion about it. I'm just interested.
Well,
Why
it's still British, and
It is.
the Argentinians are still,
claiming it.
well, I wouldn't say claiming it, but they're still testing the water. They still do flybys, and they still cross over that no-fly zone, and
It's a challenge.
Yeah, and you have the quick response teams down there which when I was down there in 2003, they were the tornadoes. Now I think they'll probably be typhoons.
So what are they doing there? Really? I mean, all that cost, all that in the middle of nowhere in South America. What
But
is
it's
the
still-
base for?
But it's still British, so they're having that presence there because 8,000 miles away from the UK. If you had to get there, as we saw in 1982, you sort of lose out because they would have the advantage of being so
So the
close.
question I'm asking is, I get it. It's like it's mine. I'm not letting go. But then so was half the world, right? But they decided to let it go. Dubai, where we live now, was part of the British Empire, right? So, but they decided it wasn't worth their while keeping it. Although we had oil and there was the Persian BP, all came from Iran and Iraq. So my question is, why go through all the trouble and cost to keep these islands in South America? There must be a reason. Have you ever thought about it? Is it
I've thought about it.
logistics? Is it oil? Is it?
There are resources around. Certainly, I know fishing, and I think oil is also something that resources are quite rich around there. Right. So yes.
So there is industry there.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Gibraltar, I get it, because the location of where it is on the strait, they see the traffic coming and going, and but I just never got Falkland Islands.
No.
So how many visits did you make to Falkland?
To the Falklands, just the one. Yeah,
Wow.
just the one. I was down there, literally bridging the gap between one outgoing station manager and one incoming.
Summertime, wintertime?
Wintertime. I was down there literally in June, and they celebrate Christmas down there, because Christmas in 25th of December on the Christian calendar is normally in Northern Hemisphere. That's wintertime, but they celebrate what they call Fixmas, Falkland Islands Christmas, on the 25th of June.
That's funny, but it's freezing cold.
Absolutely freezing, yes.
Windy. Man.
Yeah. They say the weather conditions down there can vary. You get 4 seasons in a single day, and the military have built. It's almost like Battlestar Galactica, or they call it the Death Star. It's just a series of corridors linking one part of the military unit to another, and you don't have to go outside because everything's linked from these corridors.
Wow. It's protected against attacks, the weather, everything.
Yeah, it's mainly for the weather. It's mainly for the weather. But
do they have like shopping malls and things, or no? Just corner shops and stuff like that.
Not even
and it's all relying on the supplies from the UK.
Yes.
I guess.
So you go into Port Stanley, which is twinned with Whitby in the UK as well. So you go to Port Stanley, and you know when everything is arrived, because the shelves are full, and everyone's in there getting 2 or 3 days even. Things are starting to look a lot thinner. By the end of the first couple of weeks, things are really running out, and it's that sort of.
They fly them in, or does it come on boats?
Both.
Amazing. They're really amazing. You wonder why people want to live there.
But I guess to the people that grew up there, that were born there, who know nothing different, and they
speak English.
And they speak English, yes. A friend of mine married a Falkland Islander, and she's very well educated. She left the Falkland Islands with her son. They spent a tour in Cyprus, and she was doing some other stuff in the UK, and they got divorced because he is very much he calls himself a Romany. He's constantly travelling. She couldn't put up with that.
She wanted to settle.
She wanted to go back, and she went back to the Falkland Islands. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She's a journalist there. She ran the island's newspaper called the Penguin News.
So she had a bit of a monopoly there, didn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
She hated competition, right?
Yeah.
No matter how crap you are, you still dominate the market. Yeah. Salary of about £2 a month or something. all the ticket sales. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So sorry, you were saying you were asked to go to the Falklands. You didn't know the length of time, so you decided to second thoughts about staying.
I spoke to my wife and I said, how do you fancy going to the Falkland Islands? Just to gauge her reaction, because it's not just about me.
Talking about daft questions, right?
And as a dependent, her opportunity to work is very limited. Whether you're in Germany, whether you're in Cyprus, whether you're in Gibraltar, it's limited. But when you go to the Falkland Islands, where the opportunities are even more narrow, then what are you going to do for 2 or 3 years? Think about what you would like to achieve. And it didn't ring any bells of inspiration and excitement. So we started working towards going.
I'm just imagining the day you asked her that question. Just by looking at you going, are you serious? Do I want to be in Cyprus, or do I want to go to the Falklands?
But we had no choice of staying in Cyprus with BFBS, because you get this natural. We were only due to be there for 3 years, and they were going to move us in that 4th year. So
you knew you were going to move, but
absolutely.
Where you didn't know.
Yeah, indeed.
So how much notice did you have to give, and how did they take it? Were they upset? Did they say stay?
How much notice did I give? Well,
without being shocked.
They notified me in February of 2007 that I would be starting this new role in the Falkland Islands on the 1st of January 2008. And in my mind, because my wife wasn't with me at that time, she was back in the UK visiting her sister. And in my mind, I'm thinking, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But I, again, thinking of that positive mindset, well, what are the opportunities there? What are the possibilities that could come of it? But then I weighed up the pros and cons. It was the same, well, it was in fact our entitled audience of military personnel and their dependents were, I think, around about 6,500, 7,000 in Cyprus. But we were broadcasting to the entire island. So our audience was probably 30,000.
So all expats could listen to you?
Absolutely, yeah. And in the Falkland Islands, that's really, really shrunk in terms of numbers. You don't have the same family output that you would have because they're all single guys going down there for their
There'd be no holiday makers.
No, nothing.
No tourism.
No. And I was thinking,
It's a step
I'm doing the
backwards.
same role essentially to a smaller number of people with a smaller team. I'd gone from a really big team, leading a big team in Cyprus, to going to have just like 2 or 3, going from 12 down to 3. And it just didn't inspire me. And I think if we grow, we should be moving forward, not either standing still or moving backwards. And I really felt that would be a backward step. But after more than 10 years, that's quite daunting to even consider such a thing.
Absolutely.
Because BFBS was a safe haven. It was a family-oriented unit.
And if you'd stayed, you probably would have been there.
Yeah, and some of my former colleagues
Still
are
are.
still there, and they're still doing great things. But it might be for some, it wasn't for me at that
So
time.
you would have been late 30s, 40, right?
When I left there, I was
2007,
So-
you would have been 40
41.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
for a fresh start.
yeah, and we had 2 dogs at the time. So getting those down to the Falklands, they can't be flown down there. There are no specific pet carrying organisations, and they have to go by boat. And you have to speak to the shipping company, who would then put you in contact with the captain of the ship, who would then speak to his crew and say, look, this couple have got a dog or 2, and do you want to have some extra money to look after them?
And you have to trust that they'll look after and feed them on time. It's not like the dog's going to come and tell you, Dad, the last 2 weeks was a nightmare.
No, but I'd also heard, I did some heavy research and I found out that there were dogs that had jumped overboard, and of course they're not going to go back because they can't slow the whole carriage down. There were just too many things that...
Every box was unticked.
Yes, yeah.
So they asked you in January,
February, yeah.
And then when did you tell them that it's not going to happen?
I was going through the whole, in preparation for it, I was going through the whole process, and in 2007 I undertook a sporting event as one of a team of 7. It was called the Marathon des Sables, which is an ultra distance series of marathons across the Sahara Desert. So I was the token civilian with these other 6.
You participated?
Yeah.
So you always been an athlete?
No. I used to
Although
do
you had health issues, you became an athlete.
I used to do a lot of cycling when I was at school. So in my sort of from about 10 upwards, really, used to do a lot of cycling, and this opportunity presented itself, and I seized that opportunity, and it was great. We called ourselves the Sahara 7, 6 Royal Air Force policemen and moi. But I was doing that in 2007, so I wanted to go through the motions of preparing to go to the Falklands if I couldn't get anything sorted out, because I'd worked so hard in training, preparing for this, what we call the MDS. So I had to get that, and then when I got back from that, then I was focusing on what my next move in my career would be. So I didn't quit BFBS because we were still, I booked all of the flights for
You were committed.
for the dogs to go back to the UK to pick up the ship, and all of that paperwork was all in order. So I wasn't negatively thinking about it. I was working towards it, but something in my gut didn't feel quite right. And we got to the point where everything was in order. And by this time now, at the back end of the year, we're coming into December. And in Cyprus, on the Monday, it's what we used to call the long working day. So we'd start at 6 and we'd go through till about 2 o'clock. And then the rest of the week, you'd start at 7 and you finish at 1.
Because you're preparing for the week ahead, is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I was in the office and I was at my desk, and we had one show going out, is what we called the Tea Time Show, 4 till 7. And the presenter was in the studio. Nobody else was in the office at all. The lights were off. I was just my light on my desk. And I picked up the phone. I phoned home, and we lived on camp. I lived literally 2 minutes away. And I phoned my wife and I said, I'm going to ask you one question. And whatever your answer is fine by me. She said, okay, what's the question? I said, just speak from your heart. Just, do you want to go to the Falkland Islands? And there was nothing. I said,
She
okay.
didn't want to upset you.
I think she knew, but she didn't want to say,
Yeah.
because she didn't want
To
to
influence.
Yeah. And I said, okay, that's all I need to know. She's like, but I haven't said anything. I said, I know.
That's enough.
Yeah. Silence can speak, loudly, more than words can ever speak sometimes.
Right.
And your silence is screaming at me at the moment, and that's all I need to know. So with that, I went in to work. I said, I'll be home in a minute. So we had dinner. We had a good chat. And we agreed that I would go in the next day and I had my notice in. But also the next day, it was on I think the 11th or 12th of December, the removal company was due to come in and start packing us up that day. So I went into work, and the first thing I did, I phoned them and I said, look, I'm really...
A month before you were supposed to be there.
Sorry?
A month before.
A month before, yeah.
Wow,
and I said, look, I'm really, really sorry, but I'm not going to need your services because I'm not going to be packing up today. So from that phone call, I then went in, spoke to my boss, and I said, I need to speak to you about the Falkland. He said, well, we can't change anything now.
Yeah, last minute.
And I said, look, I'm not looking to change the decision about going to the Falklands. I know you need to fill that slot. However, it's not going to be with me. But you have to. I said, I've thought about this long and hard. I've been thinking about this since February.
Yes, I was in the Sahara. I had plenty of time to think about it.
This is one of the hardest, if not the hardest decision I've ever had to come to. And the fact that I'm only making it now shows that I'm not rushing into this. And it's the right thing for me to do. He said, so what are you going to do? I don't know. I'd been out to Dubai. I'd spoken to Gulf News with a view to having the role of head of Radio 2. And there was no official offer at that time. And it was really taking that leap of faith. And I was weighing up, if I had have gone to the Falkland Islands and I decided to leave, I would have had to repatriate us back to the UK, which would have been very costly.
Yes. Did you pay tax while you were inside?
Yes.
You still paid tax.
Yes.
If you'd gone to Falkland Islands, you still would have paid
Yes.
tax because
Yeah.
it's a British.
Yeah. So it was a tough decision to make, and I think I'm a stronger person for it, having gone through that and having.
They
to
didn't
make
give you a
that.
hard time.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they put me on gardening leave straight away. So I went in and I did my show.
Unbelievable! After 10 years.
Yeah, after nearly 12 years.
Wow.
I did my show and I finished, and then by that time, and it was an example of what I use in my sort of business coaching today.
Yeah.
The controller of the radio station, he was reactive. He did not evaluate the situation and he didn't respond. He reacted, and he took me by surprise. I knew he could be his character. I knew he could be a little bit reactive.
Yeah, but still hurtful, right?
Yeah, but and my boss called me when I came off air and he said, Charles is putting you on gardening leave. I said, okay, fine. So I had 3 months basically with full pay, still staying in the quarter, and that was a good buffer. That was a really good buffer.
You had time.
At the time,
Yeah.
yeah. So you talked about entrepreneurial, antics. My wife and I set up because we didn't know whether Dubai was going to come off or not. So we set up a mini sort of property management company in Cyprus within that 3-month period, and it started to gain momentum. And we were looking after.
You were trading.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Or short-term leasing, short-term rentals, or?
No, these were people that owned properties that were letting them out for holiday makers.
Right.
So they would live back in the UK.
So you made sure they were clean, tidy, everything, keys handed over, you did a check to make sure, wow, amazing.
Yeah. And then it came good that obviously I got the offer here. I came out here, and my wife Kath, she was still running this business until she came out. She closed all of that down. She came out here I came out in the July. She came out in the November.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you came here, and culture shock. You was Radio 2 is obviously trading before, right?
Yes.
It didn't start up, so you had to take over a existing culture.
Yes. I think
How many DJs did you have? Please, what was the setup like? And what is it like now? Or, numbers wise, has it grown? Is it still there?
Numbers wise, it's shrunk now. It's,
Okay.
it's such a shame what's happened to Radio 2. Essentially, the frequencies for both Radio 1 and Radio 2 were owned by what was Emirates Media International. It's now Abu Dhabi Media. And Gulf News leased the frequencies for both Radio 1 and Radio 2.
It's quite expensive, aren't they?
They are, but they leased them over a 25-year period. And they started to grow both stations because when they were being operated by Emirates Media, they were doing nothing with them, and they were just allowed just to sort of just almost like perish, which is a crying shame. So in fair play to Vikram Dar and Gulf News, they combined. Vikram Dar was my boss. He was a great salesman, a really, really great salesman, and he sold the concept to Ubaid Al Tayyer about going in for this broadcasting concept, and Gulf News Broadcasting was born. And they started to grow the stations, both Radio 1 and Radio 2. So when I came out, I can't take the credit for launching the stations because they were already up and running. However, when I came out, we looked at how we could tighten that up and increase revenues and tighten up the presentation. And it was called Classic Hits Radio 2, so it was all about that sort of melodic approach, and even if people don't understand the language, they can sing along because it's got the melody there, and it was all about the music. But then my first day I found quite confusing because we were doing the EPL, so we were doing sports, football more specifically, the Premier League, and then we were doing a bit of this.
Live?
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Wow, amazing.
And I went to my boss and I said, how does that fit in with Classic Hits? And you know, when you say culture shock, in broadcasting terms, yes, because it's all about the revenue. So in broadcasting terms, it was all about the revenue for Radio 2, whereas with BFBS, it was not about the revenue. It was all about the content and the quality of the content and the audience that you were providing that content for.
How do you measure if the audience liked the content that you were providing? If it wasn't measured against finance,
there was
revenues?
Again, a great question, and that was something that I posed fairly later on in my career with BFBS, because I need those sort of reassurances that what you're doing is being well received and it's deemed to be valuable. And when you ask, you know, is there any reason for you to go out and visit these guys? That's where you get your best reactions from, because what you are hoping for in terms of audience responses, you get that. You know,
and I guess the forces aren't going to beat around the bush. They're going to tell it straight. Right?
Oh yeah, but that's what I used to love. You know, especially being in Cyprus or in Iraq or Bosnia. You come off the air, you go into either the NAFI or the FE, so the local grocery stores on the military bases. And if they liked what you did, they would let you know. But if they didn't like what you did, they would let you know, and they would rip you to bits. So I love that whole banter of working with the military. And so was it a culture shock for me coming out here? Yes. Did I have to adapt quickly? Yes.
So you come into Dubai, new management, and it's all revenue based. As a head of the radio station, were you looking at revenues all of the time, or were you looking at content, or do you have a sales director who looked after? How did it work?
We essentially, as the head of Radio 2, I was there to make sure that if the sales department went out and sold a concept to a client, I would then make it work. I'd bring the mechanics together to make it work on air. And I was essentially responsible for the programming and the content that was going out. I saw early on within my role of head of Radio 2 that I needed to go out and work with some of the sales teams, some of the marketing team, because what they would bring to me to get signed off
wasn't quality.
Well, it wasn't so much
the right type of clientele.
It wasn't necessarily the client, but they were allowing the client to buy, as opposed to them selling what they really needed, but based on what their understanding of. For instance, we, Sea Winks, based in Jebel Ali. So they do the seaplanes, but they go all over Dubai. Yes. We had them come on board, and I went out and I sat down with the head of their marketing and I said, "Why are you coming to Radio 2? What are you hoping to achieve by coming to Radio 2? Oh, we want to get more hits on our website." Okay, so I developed a set of mechanics where we were driving our listeners to go through the various pages on the website.
Yes.
So it's having that understanding, because
but you felt they were selling it, but they weren't actually giving a solution to the client's needs.
They were going out and providing almost like a
order list, a check. They were just filling the order form.
Yeah. They were not understanding. They were not asking the questions to understand the needs of the client.
It wasn't a consultative selling.
No.
Okay. And do you find that they resisted you? Because as a consultant, I go in, and the only person who really likes me is the owner, right? Because he writes the checks. He's cares about the money.
Yeah.
And everybody else tries to sabotage what I'm doing. What resistance did you face? Or did you face any?
Within Radio 2?
So I know you're a lot more public diplomatic than I am. Within the Radio 2 environment.
Again, that was a challenge, because obviously you're working with different cultures, you're working with different levels of power distance within those cultural values and the mechanisms of culture as well. So I did find it a challenge, and some of the even with the most gentle of approach, that could still deemed to be offensive. So yes, it was a very challenging time, but we got there. We worked through that, because communication is key, as we all know. But the way I communicated it, that look, if I'm getting it wrong and I'm upsetting you, that's not my intention. That's not what drives me to get out of bed in the morning. If I'm getting it wrong, you have to tell me and help me to get it right. We're here because we're all looking to achieve the same end goal.
Yes.
And if if I'm not understanding anything, I don't have all of the answers. And I think that's the biggest thing I learned in terms of leadership. You don't always have all of the answers. And if you expect to have all of the answers, you're likely to come down like a ton of bricks sometimes.
And that's true. And how often do you have to answer to the stockholders, the shareholders, the stakeholders? People come and say, like, like a football manager, for instance, has to every single game meet the owner and explain why they chose the team, why they did this. How often do you have to meet the
every Sunday
stakeholders?
Every Sunday.
Really?
Mr. Altai would come in, and every Sunday there was a round table meeting.
And do you feel they had a good understanding of the radio business?
No. Never saw him in the station at all. He would come in, the meeting would be in Golf News, and so the whole complex of Golf News down by Suffolk Park, yes. The paper side was over there. We were in a tucked away corner, but everything involving him was over in Golf News.
Amazing.
In his boardroom.
So it was just numbers. They looked at numbers, it's good, go. Every Sunday the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did you do that for?
Not very long in the grand scheme of things, because when I left BFBS, I didn't know if I was falling out of love with radio or I was falling out of love with BFBS. So that whole going through that decision and making that happen gave me an opportunity to see if it was radio or if it was something else. And when I got here, I was enjoying it, but I felt there was something deeper within me that I needed to do. And whilst I wasn't on air when I came here, I did put myself on air. I was doing the greatest hit show in the mornings between 10 and 11 or 9 and 10. I can't remember now. It's such a long time ago. But that was keeping my finger on the pulse, especially with the audience as well as keeping my skills polished.
And it was digital then. By this time it's digital. Everything's digital.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And I took myself off air again because my role as head of Radio 2 was, yes, to lead by example, but the time that you would be out of the office in your role as head of Radio 2 and being DC on the radio, then that to me, it was counterintuitive.
Sure.
And I took a responsible decision to remove myself. And it wasn't about my ego. I thought, you've done that, now it's time for you to do something else. So I focused purely on that, and I just realised that we were doing really, really good things, and the revenue was going up and up and up, the listenership was going up and up and up, and even though there was no official benchmarking of audience figures here, we knew we put our own...
Doing a good job.
Yeah, we were doing a good job based on the agency responses, etc. But I felt there was something deeper within me that I needed to give back on a wider level, and whilst creating great radio content and making sure that people are happy on the way to work, on the way home, and the bits in the middle of the day, I needed to do something else to help people get one step closer to be a better version of themselves.
Before we go there, I've got two questions to ask you about the radio business. Radio 2, were you competing with Radio 1 while you were there? No. Two different products, two different things. There was no competition inside the company.
There was a slight crossover, so if they were doing sort of 15 to 25, we were doing sort of 25 to 40.
It was an understanding.
Yeah, there was a cut-off point there, but my radio career didn't end there, because when I left Radio 2, I set up on my own as a broadcast consultant.
Oh wow! Helping other radio stations.
That was the initial concept, but it sort of evolved. But you had a second question. Sorry.
The second question is, here I've noticed in Dubai there's one particular well-known DJ who dominates at the moment. Okay, Virgin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, were you constantly thinking maybe we should pinch that particular DJ, bring him over, or get another character similar to that person to compete with them? Was it personality based on DJs, or was it the music or the audience? Do you see where I'm coming from? Because I'm thinking, okay, the DJ are dominating right now, particularly one guy, and if I want to have a competing, I either take him or get another personality who's better and more entertaining than this other guy is.
I love that question, and when I'm speaking about radio, because I sort of inject radio into everything I do, because that's always in me. If you slice me anywhere, you'll see radio running through my veins. So I always make comparisons to radio or create analogies out of radio. And whenever I speak to anyone about, if I'm doing a presentation skills session and I say, why do you listen to the radio? Yes. Okay. What station do you listen to? And they'll tell me. okay, why do you listen to that radio station? What is it specifically that attracts you to that radio station? And they'll say exactly what you just said. Oh, it's the music. Oh, it's the crew that they have on in the mornings. It's the combination of voices. And so when you're looking to staff a show, get talent in, it's a tough job. You know, I used to get daily. I would get inundated with people sending me what we would call air checks,
voice tracks or something.
Air checks. You know, snippets of. Ideally, there should have been live demonstrations of their show, but invariably they were just pre-recorded and produced.
Rehearsed.
Yeah. So when you get them, if you were to get them in and have them doing an interview for you, you say, well, okay, just go into the studio and just
struggle.
They would struggle. There would be a gap. What you've heard is nothing like you're experiencing now when they should be doing this live. So you can sort of see through some of those.
But you were looking for that talent all the time, yeah?
You were looking for something exceptional. And what is it that makes somebody exceptional? Basically, it's how they engage with the listener. And I use that singular
it's difficult
term.
to engage because I was interviewed a couple of times on the radio and there's no feedback. You just say it and it's silence. So somebody's got to have intuition or something within that knows the audience are entertained.
Yeah.
Right?
So that comes from knowing the audience. It comes from knowing
so
the
when you're
region.
talking, I can see the reaction on your face. On the radio, you don't nothing.
No.
I cracked a joke and nobody laughed. I was like, maybe that wasn't a funny joke, right? So I just said nothing and continued.
It would have been, though. I know you.
But you don't know, I just said it and I went, ha! And the person who was interviewing wasn't in the room. She was in another town.
Right.
So I was talking to one of these microphones and she was asking me in my ear and I was talking and I cracked a joke and nobody laughed.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
That is another example that I give when I'm doing these sort of sessions around presentation skills. Because if you can use the power of your voice and the warmth of your voice, if you want to get really intimate with that listener and you really bring it up close to the mic and you're talking as though you're talking really, really softly to that person, they can hear that on their radio. And if you want to go louder, you go a bit further back from the microphone.
You can play it.
You can play it. And if you are connecting with the warmth and the tonality of your voice, and you see that I use my hands a lot.
Yes.
My wife will say to me, if we're driving around, she'll say, be careful of your hands. I said, what? She said, because they might think you're gesturing. I'm talking. Yeah. I use my hands a lot because that helps emphasize certain words. And after 25 years of doing that as a daily show, then I guess that's going to have a knock-on effect on you. But when you get into the point of you're standing on a platform and you have maybe a presentation or a PowerPoint or you have some visual props, presenting becomes a whole lot easier.
Yes.
And it does on the radio. If you've got a crew of people, it becomes a whole lot easier because...
Why is it that mornings they're all looking for crews? And then during the day, later on, it becomes one person DJing. It's not a coincidence.
It's not
all
a
over
coincidence.
the world, there's 2 or 3 people crewing.
Yeah, it wasn't always like that, but it started really in the 80s. In the UK, it started to go to that what they called the zoo format. So you'd have 2 people, then that would grow to 3, and you'd get the weather person and the news person coming in as part of that, and it became a whole crew. So you might have up to 5 or 6 voices.
And they found that's popular.
Yeah, because it appeals to...
Why just mornings?
Because that's where your sort of niche markets are, the busiest times of the day. People are getting ready to go to work, so you've got a captive audience. They're getting ready to come home from work. You've got a captive audience. So having those different voices, those different senses of humour, those different perspectives, viewpoints, etc., it appeals to a wider audience, yeah. But it's the same audience. And I used to work with Chris Moyles at Chiltern Radio before he went off to Radio 1. Well, he left to go to Capital Radio before going to Radio 1. And I learned a lot from him in terms of, he was all about that zoo format and the creativity of having the right people, the right mix of people in the studio and how they would appeal to the audience.
He had the feel for it. He knew, and he did very well. Yeah,
very well, yeah.
Now, I lecture against radio advertising because I think if you can't measure it, don't advertise. If you're marketing, you've got to be able to measure return on investment. Mm-hmm. And for many years, you sold radio advertising, or you help people sell radio advertising. If you were competing with me, how would you actually? Because the radio advertising, TV advertising revenues are going down because of digital. How do you think radio salespeople can compete with people like me, who's telling their clients, don't advertise on the radio because you can't measure it? I understand McDonald's, I understand Coke. They're so big, they need to put adverts on billboards, yes? They need to, it's part of the branding, they need to spend some money on sponsorship, spend some money on radio. But if it's an SME, which most of my clients are, I tell them not to advertise on the radio or newspapers. Because once the advert's done, it's thrown in the bin. They stop hearing it.
What I'm going to say to you now,
Please.
probably goes very much against who I've come across to be. But I would agree with you, especially in this market, because I don't think the quality of the adverts of the radio commercials here are high enough. The scripting is not good enough. There's no creativity there. You know, I listen to.
I cringe.
I know.
When I'm listening. I'm like, oh, they missed this, they missed that.
I listen to some ads. They capture my attention at 28 seconds of a 30-second spot. It's too late then.
Yes.
You got my attention at the wrong end of that ad.
I'm driving to school and my 10-year-old son's going, that ad's not going to work. Or what's the terms and conditions? Or what's the catch? A 9 or 10-year-old can see it coming.
Yeah.
So poorly done. So do you think there's an opportunity for a creative company to go out?
Most definitely.
But isn't it part of the radio station's job to actually throw the creativity in the service? Or
Well, they are. They are.
And they're messing it up.
Well, whether it's coming from the production department within the radio station itself,
Most of them
or it's
have a
coming through the
production
agency.
department, yes.
Yeah, but a lot of it comes through agencies as well. So you've got these creatives that are producing, and I've gone off to do some voiceovers, and I've looked at the script thinking, really? Really? And I think there's a unique opportunity to be had here, certainly in the world of creativity and content creativity.
How would you get your first customer? Let's say you and I started a creative agency. I have actually had a creative agency, but it's nothing in the production side. How would we get our first customer? Because I guess it's a bit of a monopoly. It's very hard to get into. How would we do it? And I'm serious. What if we decided to do that?
I would do some research and find somebody who's really in need of some support, and I would say
who's willing to listen.
And say, look, if you were to do this right, what would you be looking to achieve? Forget about budgets at the moment in time. If you were to do this right, in the right way, and you had a good creative team that could write a message for you, that would communicate with your potential audience, what would you like to achieve? And I think that is something that is still not being ticked. In the same way that I was going out with some of the sales and marketing team to sit with the client and find out, why are you considering running a radio campaign? Yeah. Whether it's a sponsorship, whether it's live reads, whether it's a competition, why are you considering radio? What is it you're looking to achieve? And I don't think people have been asked that question.
I've done this with sales, and most sales don't get it. They don't get it that the repeat business is so goddamn easy when you look after the same customer and keep going back. They're always hunting for new ones. One of my concerns is that if we go to production as a creative agency to a radio station, they think in margins. If I hire these people, I'm going to make less money, and my life is all about margins and money. So, what do you think? Do you think it's still doable? I
think so, but if you position it correctly, because you might be paying, in terms of your margins, you might have this team of people that you're paying at the moment, but if you could reduce that number, that you could create more quality content and creatives, then you're going to get more for that, because the revenue is going to start showing itself for the client. They're going to come and spend more because they're going to see the benefit of coming and working with you. They're going to want to spend more, get more repeated action. So I think it will be maybe a slow burner because people are so used to what is going out at the moment. And if you speak to, I would say 8 out of 10 people about radio commercials in the UAE, they'd probably have the same opinion.
Exactly.
And
what do you think of getting with the large agencies? Because the agency, again, they're creative, but they're not coming out with great stuff.
No. Would
they listen? Or no. The agencies won't listen because it's kind of shooting themselves in the foot, isn't it? They're saying that we're not very creative.
You need to disrupt. In a big way, to show them that they have to listen.
Would you go down that route of open up a creative agency for the radio business?
In all honesty, no. Yes.
If you had a couple of $1 million, would you buy a radio station?
For my personal satisfaction.
One of the radio stations that you know is not doing so well, would you buy one? Would you take one over? Is it worth the headache?
No, probably not. Not for me now. No, not with what I'm doing. People ask me, do you still get involved in radio? I still do a few bits and pieces with people. Do I want to be committed to a daily show? No, I don't have the time
Let's say you
for
were
that.
advising me.
Sorry?
Let's say you were advising me. I can't afford TV,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I could afford radio. Would you say, go for it?
What, to buy a radio station?
Yeah.
Depends on what
And use you as a consultant.
Depends on what your objective of buying that radio or investing your money.
Make money. Because I still do believe people like Rupert Murdoch,
Mm-hmm.
yes, they control the media, they control a lot of things.
Mm.
Not so much in the UAE, because you don't have as much freedom
Mm.
to express good and bad as you would in other parts of the world. But they have a lot of power.
They do,
Right?
indeed.
And a lot of business people, Jeff Bezos, the owner of Salesforce, they bought Time magazine, Jeff's of Washington Post. These guys are buying newspapers and magazines and TV stations to influence people, right?
Yeah. If you look at the radio stations here that are making money, they are making money. You know, you look at ARN, but they've got a lot of stations where they're covering different markets.
So
as
they
well.
are making money.
Yeah.
Right? Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Was radio to the end of my radio career? No, because I set up my own consultancy.
Yes.
And I started to work with Fujira Media Group, and they wanted to launch an English language station, and we launched.
So you physically had to go and work in Fujira?
Yes. Yeah.
You like travelling, don't you? You like driving a lot.
Not quite so much these days as I did.
So the license for a Fujira radio was through Fujira?
They own,
Does each Emirates gets their own license, their own.
yeah.
Maybe I'm not getting the terminology
well,
right.
well, everything comes through the obviously the main focus of Abu Dhabi. So you've got the TRA up there, so Transmission Regulation Authority or Regulatory
But
Authority.
they give so many licenses to each emirate.
They don't give. You have to apply for them.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
Fujira had to pay and apply. Really?
Absolutely.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but Fujira Media Group owns this frequency, and they used to have the Coast 102.4, or was it 104.2? No, 102. I can't remember.
gone.
It's gone now. But they used to have that frequency, and they used to lease it to Coast. But then they did a deal where they had that. So we had this frequency, but we were in the wrong side of our transmitter site was on the wrong side of the mountain. So by the time our signal got to Dubai, it was fairly weak.
Yeah.
But we created from
So
a
there's no
blank sheet of paper.
satellite. There's no satellite.
No.
It's on Earth,
Mm.
over the mountains. Blah,
Yeah.
blah. What amazing.
Yeah. And Mekki Abdullah, who was the CEO of Fujira Media Company, he said, if you got a line of sight, you should be able to get a signal. So, we had many challenges. But Rock Radio was a phenomenal station. In the following that we had in the short space of time we were on air was amazing.
In Fujira or local.
No,
to that
we used
area.
to we could get it all the way up to the Coronation Abu Dhabi if the
really?
atmospherics were right, but you couldn't guarantee it.
Too risky. Yeah,
But
it
people
was,
were then turning up the power of their transmitters as well. So, if whatever their licensing agreement was, that they're broadcasting at a higher power. But we did well. I hung on in there.
Is it still trading?
No.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah, it's a real shame.
Yeah.
Real shame.
I remember I came here, I went to Abu Dhabi, I've been here 9.5 years. And I think about 7 years ago, I was invited to go to this, a client of mine phoned up. I said, I want some digital advertising, sales and marketing consultancy. Come and see me in this building in Abu Dhabi.
Mm.
I drove by and it was this huge building and they had eye scanners to enter, but there's no security. So I phoned the guy and said, it's the right building. Yeah, just open the door. So I physically opened the doors, went through, they had the most amazing equipment just sitting there. Televisions, it was just so futuristic. And I went and said, are you sure it's the right building? Yeah, take the lift, go to the second floor, down the hallway, my office at the end. Second floor, the most amazing flat screens, everything else, not one person there. So I went through, opened this door, went in, and he was writing checks. So what's this? He goes, I'm paying creditors. So why? He goes, we've been, I think, don't quote me on this, but he said for 3 years, we've been building this TV station. We've invested, we got this. A month before we open up, the owner changed his mind. Just changed his mind. $300 million.
Wow.
Yes. So what are you doing? He said, I'm writing the check, so we're on good terms. And the day after tomorrow, his friends and family will come, an empty place there. They'll come and pick up the computers, take what they like, and leave. Never seen anything
What a
like it
shame.
in my life. It's a TV station.
Wow.
And that was my first experience in this market, like
That was 9.5 years ago.
9.5 years.
Wow.
9 years ago. No, 8.5 years ago. I'm here 9.5 years. So it was probably 8 years ago. And I thought, wow, is this how business is done here? And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because in my head, it's all about profitability. It's about margins. It's not about the size of my business, or I own this, or I do that. And it was quite scary. And the guy just paid everyone, phoned me up next month, they all came, picked their stuff up, the building is being used for something else, and he moved on. $300 million.
Like it never even started.
There's nothing. Hundreds of people have worked for this station for 3 years and nothing happened. Yeah,
What a shame.
interesting.
Such a shame.
So you went into self-employment. Dun, dun, dun. That was a wake-up call, right? You had to get your own license, you had to, visa, you had to get everything. No customers, no nothing. How long have you been in Dubai or UAE before you did that? 2 years?
Yeah.
About 2 years.
Literally just under 2 years.
So after Fujairah, did you have any other clients?
Whilst I was with Fujairah, I was with them from the time we started signing the contract of working on this station, which is in 2010, and so when it sort of ended and we called a day and parted company, I think that was probably the end of 2013, early 2014.
Okay.
So
3, 4 years.
yeah, and in that time I was using that really as my sort of my platform to reach out to other people, and it started to take off very
So
slowly.
when did you open up the unique company?
Well, that was it.
Yeah.
So I literally started. I think I got my trade license in April 2010.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that was Unique Group. So the
Isn't
Unique
it funny? My
Consulting.
company is called Be Unique.
Yes.
And yours is Unique, but yours is YOU.
Yeah,
And why Unique?
purely and simply because of my experience with Radio 2. When the sales team and marketing team were going out to clients, they were giving them an off-the-shelf solution, and that's not what I felt was the right thing. So the whole part of the consultancy is sitting down, seeing what your needs are, listening to what your interests are, and then what options we can try to create around meeting those from the services. So it's not just giving you that bowl of fruit because I think you're hungry. It's what are you really hungry for?
Yes.
So maybe if you've got apples and bananas in there, maybe you like pears or grapefruit.
I get it. So that's on the radio side. Tell me about one or two of your clients outside the radio business. Because for this region, what you're saying is quite common in Europe. Here, when I first came as a consultant, I said, let me come on the road with you. And I couldn't believe it. I went with the CEOs of the company, they're pitching the client, their mobile phone rings, and in the middle of their pitch, they pick up the call, and the client had to wait till they finish its call. And they'll pick up a catalogue and go, this is this, this is this, this is which one do you want? And I'm thinking, if this is the CEOs, what chance have I got with the salespeople? Right? So for you, what sounds normal for us is quite sophisticated selling for this region. How did you get your first client to dig what you're saying, to understand it and see the value that you're bringing?
Because it didn't come from a pitching conversation. It came from an introduction on a social setting, and just by asking some of those sort of coaching questions without.
Where did you meet these people? Where do you network? How did you meet these prospects?
It was through a friend of a friend. So this person introduced me to somebody, and I think you guys have got a lot in common, and it was just literally having a conversation over coffee, and it wasn't any sort of expectational conversation. It was just having a coffee, getting to know each other because person X introduced us, and it sort of went from there. So they liked some of the questions I was asking, and some of the questions I was asking were prompting them to think about their situation and what they might be able to do in a slightly different way.
So tell me about your first client outside the radio business.
Well, what drove me to wanting that one-on-one, I was working with a company whilst I was doing the stuff with Fujairah. I joined a company called Automotive as a freelancer, Barmy had been in the region for 30 plus years, and they were very much into doing team building, team development work, and it was very much you're the client, and these big sort of corporate clients, Etisalat, government, Dubai Police, all of those big companies, and they'd have fantastic half-day, one-day or two-day events.
So in the coaching and event business, right?
They,
motivational and...
Yeah, and they're doing experiential learning. So basically it's learn by doing. So you'll create a simulation, you'll do an activity or an exercise, and the client is looking for specific learning objectives to come from those. So as part of the debrief, you would draw that out of them. So if you're configuring this island sort of hopping activity, how do you get to the middle of the island? How do you then get off the island? Because you got shark infested waters around the island.
Did you create the games yourselves, or there was a catalogue of games already in the library?
No, they were literally
created. Off the client. Off the shelf.
Off the shelf. Okay. Yeah, and they would give it to the client, and they would really tailor the debriefs around the certain learning objectives, and they were great.
Was this a franchise, or was it something that started in this?
No, it started in this.
Amazing.
Started by a guy called Graham Nugent. And it grew and grew and grew over. I think he was in the region like 37 years.
Was not here anymore.
He's moved now. He's. I think he's in his latter 70s now. But he's like your typical entrepreneur. He's still working even today. But I think he's based in Cyprus now, Eastern Mediterranean. But he was a very charismatic individual, and people loved him. But as the company grew, and he had to bring
that personal touch.
Well, they didn't lose the personal touch, because he was still very much hands-on, and he was still going out doing a lot of the deliveries. But I enjoyed my time working with them immensely. But
as a consultant,
as a freelance sort of facilitator and consultant. But I asked the question one day. So the great work that we did on that half-day, one-day, or two-day event, how do you measure what people are taking back and applying back in the workplace to see that return on investment? And there was no answer, because that wasn't being
did their job and moved on.
Yeah.
Right.
So my first client was really working with a pharmaceutical company, Merck Serono, and my first sort of contract was working with 5 sales managers. 3 were based in the UAE, and 2 were based. One was in Yemen, and the other one was split between Kuwait and Bahrain. And so I was seeing the 3 in Dubai. I was seeing them face to face, and it was great. Now the others I met on the initial kickoff, but I was working with them remotely. Now, when I was working with a guy in Yemen, it was at the time where things were starting to escalate, and sometimes we'd have our calls, sometimes we wouldn't. And having the experience of working with the military,
yes,
working in hostile environments, when you're going through rocket fire and mortar attacks, and I'd be on the Skype calls with him, and I could hear stuff going off, and
he was still doing business.
Yeah, he was still doing business, and he was a lovely guy, really, really lovely guy. So a lot of our coaching was around his ability to deal with all of the concerns that he had for his family, his team, and all of this is going off and building around him. So wonderful times. And the guy that I had, who was split between Kuwait and Bahrain, I'll never forget the call that he, after 6 months of working together, he called me. It was in the early part of January, just literally into the new year, first week into the new year. And he called me, he said, "I just want to say thank you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because when we first started working together, he was way under his target. He was completely demotivated. His teams were going off and doing things quite, in opposite directions. And what he managed to do is finish 116% above target."
Wow.
And he phoned me to thank me, and he said, "I wouldn't have been able to do it without you." And I said, "Well,
you probably would have left the job."
I was just shining the light. You followed the light, and you took the action. But we had some really sort of harsh conversations.
I've noticed that I'm more aggressive, I think, when it comes to consultancy. I'll go in and say, right, this person can make it or can't make it. It's black and white for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if they can, I'll invest in training. If they can't, get out, because they're terrorizing your business, blah, blah. So there was 5 people in there.
Mm-hmm.
All of them had potential in being trained, yes? Mm-hmm. Have you ever gone in and said, right, this person's a terrorist in your organization, get rid?
I don't just go in and sort of talk behind their back to say to the employer or their manager that this person's not right. I would talk to that person, and I would talk to them about and again, we all know that we all have different opinions and points of view and perspectives on things. So I would ask them, I would give them that opportunity to see things from a different perspective and what they might be able to do. And if there's still no response and they really are there just to fill the time and tick the box, then I will, because you know, I have my loyalty to the client, but I've got to give that person the fair chance. I've got to give them the fair chance.
See, I don't. I go in, I just say experience says that this person will or will not make it. Yes? Are they motivated or not motivated? Because I think you can teach a motivated person, but if somebody's not motivated, you can never teach them because they're not willing to learn. Or somewhere along the way, they've lost the loyalty to that company. Somewhere along the way, they've lost their way.
But that's why, love, why did they lose that motivation? Or did they not have it there in the first place? And if they didn't have it there in the first place, why on earth did you employ them?
You see, I actually think that in this market, there's room for you and me. I'm not saying you're right, I'm wrong, I'm right, whatever. It's just that I think the nature of the clients that I inherited, they wanted things happening tomorrow. Okay, so if you got a client like a pharmaceutical company, they have time. They want to see improvement. Yes, I get a client. If you don't get the sales next month, I'll go bust. You with me? It's more urgent. It's make it happen tomorrow. They've screwed the business. They want to. I went to a shipping company. If I hadn't turned the business down in 3 months, shipping, they would have gone bust with 2,500 staff. You can imagine. Right, so I had to go and bull in a china shop and turn things around.
But this is where my sort of passion for leadership comes in, because I still believe, with my hand on my heart, that nobody gets out of bed in the morning with the intention of going in and doing a bad job. I truly believe that. If they aren't doing the right, if they're not doing right in terms of the expectations for that role, there's a reason for that. Now, have they lost the motivation? If that's the case, what happened for them to lose the motivation? And a lot of it comes down to the lack of leadership skills in their managers or supervisors.
What if they've got used to getting away with it? What if they got used to getting paid for not doing much? So they got into a habit of being lazy, taking shortcuts, and it's not serving the company well, and it's not serving them well. But they've always got paid.
But the company is at fault to a degree for allowing them to get into those habits.
100%. 100% the company's at fault.
I was delivering a training this week in Abu Dhabi, and it was with an ADNOC subsidiary, and I had 15 Emiratis in the room, and they were sort of high potential, so they've been recognised for this sort of leadership development.
Yes.
And you say that I've got a very soft approach, but I talk them through various behavioural preferences. And I take them through a DISC model. Are you familiar with
DISC?
Of course. Yeah. So I take them through a DISC model, and I'm not a high D. And for your listeners and viewers, you know, DISC is about understanding our behavioural preferences. So can I just go through the model very quickly?
Of course you can. I'm off red. I'm off the chart red.
Yeah. So that red is. So if you think about DISC and how we can evaluate other people and see ourselves.
Yes.
Now, Dr. William Newton Marston, he devised this concept, and he understood that our behaviour could be measured on 2 axes. So basically how we tend to be around people and how we tend to approach tasks. And also the environment that we prefer to be in. Are we preferring a fast-paced environment, which means we're more extroverted, outgoing, or are we more inclined to have a slower pace, more introverted? And depending on where we are, so if we prefer a fast-paced environment and we're very task-focused, that would put us up in the top left quadrant, which we call it a D, for decisive or dominant. Then if we're fast-paced, but we're very much about the people, that would make us an I, so we're very interactive or influential. If we go down below the line, so that below that horizontal line, so we're going down to a slower pace now, but we're still about the people, that would make us an S, so we've got the DIS, so we're more steady or stabilizing. And then if we're still preferring that slower pace, but we're very task-focused, will be what we call a C, DISC.
Yeah, so which are you?
For cautiousness or conscientiousness. What do you think I am, from what you know about DISC?
I know you love people, so I would say I, D-I-I.
Okay.
Am I right?
I'm an S actually, I'm an SI.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and when I start to go through and what those different
the
dimensions.
fast pace is not for you, right?
The fast pace, when I'm doing my work, so on the radio, if I'm delivering a presentation or something, I'm very, very fast paced.
Correct.
But that's not because I'm stepping into a character role. I'm stepping into that because I'm stepping into my sort of energy space.
Yes.
But that's not where I am when I'm relaxing. So that's not my natural.
Interesting.
I'm more of a passive person, which you picked up on earlier on.
Yes.
I'm more of a people person, so you can rely on me. If you say to me, Darren, I need you to help me with this, I'll drop everything that I'm doing and I'll help you with that. And that is a regular pattern of behaviour that you're going to experience with me.
Yeah, but it's that passiveness. I didn't think you were. I thought you were like fast, but no.
But I mean, it's so close. I mean, I'm quite high on the S, but I'm just a little bit higher on the
you're
I.
in between, right? So.
I'm just SI. There's not much between. But when I talk about that, if I'm doing a training,
You're extremely giving. I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. You put everybody else first.
Yeah, and I am very motivational. It's very much about inspiring and motivating people. So there's not much, but I'm just a little bit higher on the S. But there's not much between the two.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So when you're looking for a salesperson, where should it be on the desk?
A lot of salespeople are quite high Ds,
Yes.
very, very high Ds. I think I think you can have a good salesperson with a high S, but they're probably going to be giving a lot more value to the customer than they would make to the company.
Too much empathy.
Yeah. But again, depending on what their internal values are. So when we start to talk about leadership and why somebody has become demotivated, it's all very well having that understanding of the DISC, but what's going on here to drive that behaviour? That's the key element. Because if you look at our internal drivers, what buttons get us out of bed in the morning? If you've got somebody that really stands for that sort of high reward, they're very much economically driven.
Yes.
And the role that they're doing does not provide that for them. They're not going to be motivated.
Sure.
So if somebody's more of individualistic, so they like to be recognised for who they are, what they can do, if that's not being presented to them in their role, they're not going to be motivated. So a lot of people I found in the last few years that I've been working specifically in this area and focusing on these areas of leadership is people are doing a job where they're not fulfilled because their internal values are not being met. And that's why people are not performing.
So I agree. So where is the best time to evaluate these people? Right at the beginning of the interview process, I guess, right? But most of the time you come in right in the middle. They've got them, they've hired them, you come in to fix it.
Yeah, which then is costly.
Exactly.
I'm working with a recruitment company at the moment who are using me to go through a certain assessment. So people who are shortlisted for particular roles, and they want to make sure that out of these 5 or 6 people, who do we pick? Who do we pick based on what we feel the role requires? Yes. And so you said, who do we go for on the DISC for a sales role? So that would, you tell me, don't tell me what the role is, tell me what characteristics you're looking for from that individual. And then I will align the two.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I find that so rewarding because I don't actually have to meet the person because the assessment they'll take is so accurate.
Yeah.
It's so accurate. It's literally a suite of tools that combines so many different aspects.
How much does it cost a company to use the DISC services? Let's say through yourself. Don't tell me about the consultancy bit, right? Because that depends on the client and time.
Yeah.
So what does a client pay?
On
an agency.
Again, depending on their sort of sense of urgency, really. But on average, it would cost you. If you wanted to shortlist, say, 6 candidates and you wanted me to take them through a process, so I put them through the assessment, I would then go through and I create a summary of those assessments based on what you tell me the role to be, the characteristics. That's probably going to be about, I think, 1,500 to 1,600 dirhams.
That's fantastic.
Per person.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Imagine you save on the visa cost, training cost, motivational cost, and also the environment that the colleagues, because you don't want to see people coming and going or not performing, right? So it's not much money invested.
You're absolutely right. The money, it might seem an expense on the outset, but what you can save is, it's an investment, because what you might save in time and money. A few years ago, whilst I was working in Fujairah, there was a new Novotel opened up, literally diagonally opposite where we were, and I got to know the GM. And they'd been obviously open for a period of time, 3 months before they actually opened the doors. They were getting training, getting events up and running. And their sales manager was the GM, a very well respected and very experienced general manager within the hospitality industry. And he decided that this person was right based on the CV and the interview that was
and
conducted.
his experience,
Exactly.
his gut feeling.
Yes. Now, they did not perform from day one.
Okay.
They started to show the right signs, but they started to show a lack of performance almost immediately. So we were talking, and we met in, a very neutral setting. We met in an event that was...
It was like over dinner or over coffee or a drink or something, just a chat.
I can't even think what the event was, but it was a networking event where I was introduced to him. Hi, how are you? What do you do? I'm the GM of this hotel. Okay, great. What do you do? And he just expanded from there. So I said to him, so congratulations, the hotel's been open now, for 2 months? He said, well, we've been conducting business now for sort of 5 months, but I'm not happy with my sales manager. I said, why is that? He said, well, they're not performing. And I can't understand it because they've got a really good pedigree. I saw their CV, and when I invited them in for the interview, they interviewed really well. But since they've been in the job, nothing. And I can't, whatever I've tried to do, I just cannot make it work. I said, okay. I said, so what are you going to do? He said, well, I need to let them go, or need to find somewhere where they'll be more suited within the business. So what are you going to do to fill their shoes? Well, I've got to advertise. Okay. So when you get down, and this was almost like a tentative, carrot, dangle the carrot and they'll come. I said, you narrow it down to 3 or 4 shortlisted candidates. Don't tell me who they are. Tell me, what you're looking for, what you saw in the interview, but don't give me the names.
Yes.
And I will then marry up with who you're talking about from what I see.
Who's the best candidate?
Yeah. And I said, you tell me what your gut instinct is on who you believe is the right person for you, and I would tell you based on what you told me you require from the role.
And this is at no cost. This is just over a chat, or you?
This was
as a favour.
As a favour, yeah. So it was me looking to get in and show him the power of doing this with a view to getting work.
More business.
Yeah. And we got to the point where I narrowed it down to who would be the best candidate.
And was it the person that he had got feelings for?
No.
Wow, amazing.
No.
And so you could have made the same mistake.
Could have made the same mistake. And I said, look, based on what you've told me, with my life, I say this person is the right person, right fit for that role.
Wow. And did he hire him?
He did hire.
And they did well?
Yes, they did.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I said, that's my gift to you, and trust me on this, you will not be spending the same money that you spent on that last one.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
this, from what you've told me, is the right fit for the role.
It's not just the money that is wasted on salaries, it's lost revenue, lost opportunity.
Yeah.
And in the hotel business, it's constant, it keeps coming back. So it's could be the lifetime of a client, not just that particular deal.
Yeah.
So tell me about most of your clients now. We talked about Unique Group, we're going to talk about Alpha Group. How long do we have?
You tell me.
Oh,
it's your meter.
Soon, we have to be quick. So I'm worried about Yaya. He's always poor thing staying late for me. So clients, Unique Group, how did you come to meet Alpha Group? Tell me about what you did. This is where you and I met.
Yes, yeah. Well, about 4 years ago, I was approached by a company in the UK asking me if I would be interested in having a chat with them to represent them in this region. And they are aligned with what I do, but they're on a bigger scale. And they do leadership, they do development, they do coaching, and they have a lot of global clients, and they want people to be able to service those clients without having all of the incurred costs of travelling and putting up in accommodation around the world. So they also work very closely with a company based in the US, in Boston, Massachusetts. So to cut a long story short, I went and had a chat with them. They do a lot of training delivery, a lot of coaching, and I signed to represent them. So I'm still independent, but I represent them. So I get to travel the world, as well as deliver stuff here for them. I get to travel the world delivering trainings to wonderful people all the way around the world.
And do they give you the curriculum, or you add your own bit to the curriculum?
No, it's all theirs. It's all their IP. Basically, their clients are big oil and gas industry, blue chip clients. So these are global programs that are delivered.
Is that the same company as Karina Cross?
No. I know Karina really well, but it's not
the same company.
So that's great. But then I was still looking at how I could scale the number of people that I could actually have interaction with and
I
help
guess,
grow.
Are you depending on them giving you tasks, right? So you want something more consistent and more. Am
Yeah.
I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Because you want to be in charge of your own destiny.
I do, and I also want to find other ways of how I can help people to grow. So the Alpha Group.
So money being a byproduct.
Yes, yeah,
So you want to help people, but you know you'll get paid. The
Yeah.
better job you do, the more
Yeah.
money you get paid.
exactly.
Right? And that's
So-
how it's always. By the sound of it, that's how it's always happened to you,
yes,
right?
yeah.
Because I don't hear you talking about money at all.
No,
And you've done touch with extremely well.
it's not. First and foremost, it's not about the money, and that comes down to that economic
Yes.
driver as well. Do I have a high economic driver? No, but my altruistic driver is very high.
And byproduct of that is money.
Yes. So give good to other people, and that revenue will come. So
And you don't spend time. I noticed you don't spend time worrying about it because you believe most people are
Yeah.
good people.
I do.
Most
yeah.
people will pay you for
Yes.
a good day's work.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So the Alpha Group.
I congratulate you, by the way.
Thank you so much.
In a very cynical world, it's very rare to see somebody like that. And I actually believe most people are good people.
Mm.
You're going to kiss a few frogs,
Yes.
but most
yeah.
people are good people.
But again, even driving here today, there was a guy who he was in a truck, a pickup truck, and he just pulled out in front of me.
And
And
he killed you.
He could have done if I hadn't been quite so alert. But
Yes.
was he doing that to me personally? No. He did. I don't think he had any intention to pull out in front of me and cause me
Yes.
to swerve or you know.
So you decided not to go crazy.
I tooted because I needed to make
Sure,
him
get his
aware, so he had
attention.
to get back in lane. But I truly believe that was not an intention on his part. He just did it, and that's how we operate. We do things from a habitual perspective.
Well, this is something interesting happened to me yesterday.
Mm.
Okay, and I'm not proud of what I did. Not at all proud of it. I'm going to say this in public. I got up early in the morning here at 7:30. Had my meetings. Had a bank manager meeting at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So I finished everything, left the office, got there at 9:05. So I was already late. My accountant's with the bank manager saying he's waiting. I parked the car at the wrong branch. And I walked and I'm sweating and I realized I'm at the wrong branch. Came to the car and 3 cars are parked like this and 1 car are parked in front. Okay? Blocking me and 3 other guys. So this guy comes out and says, "Is this your car?" I said, "No, is this yours?" And he says, "No, I'm the guy next to you. I can't get out either." So the guy had left a card under the windscreen. So I called the number and he's not answering. By this time I'm soaking wet. My accountant's phone up saying bank manager's waiting, right? So I'm getting wound up. Called this guy 20 times. After about 50 minutes he answered. And I wasn't very polite. I said, "Move your car." Okay? So I waited. 17 minutes later, he's waltzing down. I physically attacked the guy. I really did. I went over, and I'm not proud of it. I lost it. Absolutely lost it. And, you know, he kind of apologized, got in the car and drove very speedily away from the scene.
I'm sure he did.
Okay? Whilst I was chasing the car and kicking it. Afterwards, I was shaking and I was like, actually, that was uncontrolled anger. I'm not proud of it, right? But what an idiot.
I know.
37 minutes I waited and I missed my appointment. The bank was peeved off with me.
I bet,
set the appointment 3 weeks before. And the guy, don't tell me this guy's not an idiot. Don't tell me he had no bad intentions. To leave the car there, with the doors open, with a card there, he doesn't answer his phone.
But I do believe that
But hang on, the other guy next to me, cool as a cucumber. Hey mate, you know, I missed my appointment. And I'm like,
you're just going to get your anger issues sorted and you'll be fine.
but I think I was brought up to make sure that he doesn't do that again. Are you with me?
Yeah.
If it was 2 of us like the other guy, they would have thought, oh, it's okay, just let him go.
Yeah.
And he'll probably do it again. But I promise you, he will never park like that again.
Well, you might think twice about it.
Yes.
But his actions that he took.
If he does, I'm going to go past and check it out.
But the actions that he took to park his car, he did not have the intention to upset you, not miss your meeting.
Sure, he
That's
just
just a
didn't care.
consequence
Just didn't.
of his action. So, have I got sort of more mellow as I've got older? Yes, because I'm starting to see the world in a very different place compared to 10 or even...
That's probably why I've already had a heart attack. That's probably why.
Maybe, I don't know.
But is it like a decision you make and you mellow, but do you inside this turbulence and then you go, calm down, or it's just you just
Yeah, I do. And what I say about this whole sort of not reacting anymore, but evaluate. And I use the iceberg as a good example of this, because up to 95% of what we do is below the water, and that's our subconscious mind. So 95% of what we do,
your internal dialogue, is how you're talking to yourself.
It's the stuff we do without thinking about it.
Yeah.
So when you react to that guy, you're not doing that at a conscious level. That's not Dariush thinking, I'm going to go and have a go at this guy. You're doing it from that 95%. So what I do now, I'm still working on it. It's still very much work in progress, but.
And it'll always be for the rest of our lives, I guess, right?
Of course it will. So when I get those moments, I do react sometimes, but then I catch myself and think, okay, evaluate. So start to rise up, get to the surface, come up out to that 95%, get to the surface of the water, evaluate what's going on. Know that they're not doing that to you personally. They've got no personal vendetta. They don't know who you are. Why would they have a personal vendetta?
True.
Then you start to evaluate at a conscious level, and you can respond appropriately. And that's the difference that makes the difference.
Because what I see, a lot of people get wound up, especially in this area, on bad service. They lose it when they get bad service. And to me, because I'm in that customer service business, I'm like, hang on, that guy hasn't been trained. He doesn't know. There's no point taking out on him. And it's not personal. It just hasn't had. And also, the guy's on peanut money. Yes? What do you expect?
Exactly, yeah. When you ask people why are they complaining, and they say bad service, so what specifically about the service is bad? Most of the time, they would probably not be able to answer. I had, in these trainings that I was doing this week, there was a new venue in Abu Dhabi. They'd moved, and this was a new venue, so it was the first delivery in this hotel. So the head of the training and development for this organisation came in literally about an hour before we finished the session. And he's a lovely guy. I've got on well with him for a number of years. And he just said, as you walk through the door, everything okay? And one of the girls, who was very, very forward very vocal, very forward in how she would communicate, she said, I've got a problem with the buffet. And we were doing problem solving. And he said, well, no, it's okay, because you've got an online evaluation, we can deal with that later. I don't want to detract from the program. And I said, actually, Mohammed, I think that's a great opportunity because we're dealing with problem solving. So I said, Hind, what is the problem that you have with the buffet? And she was giving me all of the different things,
the issues, exactly.
I said, what's the problem? I'm not hearing what the problem is. And she I said, but do you not understand what I'm saying? I'm looking to find out what the problem is. Did you have anything to do with the buffet? Did you engage in the buffet? Yeah. So what did you eat? Did it make you ill? No. So what is the problem with the buffet? And over a period of time, I said, use the model that we've been going through. Define to me what the problem is. Give me a statement of what the problem is with the buffet. And it came down to it didn't meet her personal preference.
Wow.
I said, so you don't have a problem with the buffet, it just doesn't meet your palate.
Yes. Wow.
Does that mean to say there's a problem with the buffet? Yes. I said, no, I have to disagree. Does the buffet meet the requirements?
Just because it doesn't fit your requirement doesn't mean there's a problem with it.
So when somebody complains about customer service, they're not getting the right customer service. What are your expectations of my customer service that I should be providing you?
That we're failing.
Yeah. And where am I falling down? Where are those gaps occurring?
So did she end up hating you forever?
I gave her a really hard time. And I said, look, for the last 3 days, I know I've given you all a hard time, but I hope you respect me for it. Because otherwise, what's the point of you being here? What's the point of me being here?
So she put the knife down.
She brought muffins in on the last day. She bakes muffins on the night before the last day.
Probably spit in it.
Probably, but they tasted okay. They were well baked.
Spit, yeah, exactly. Amazing. So, sorry, I interrupted you. Tell us about the Alpha Group.
Yes. So the Alpha Group is a body that allows me as an individual to connect with business owners, where I can get business owners in a room, around the same table, not having any direct competition.
It's not about networking, is it?
It's not about networking. It's
about peer group.
It's about brain working. It's about a peer group of business owners who come together to mastermind, to raise their issues that they're facing within their business, and using the business minds of the other people in the room to help resolve some of those issues.
How do you make sure that those individuals in the group are committed? Committed to helping, committed to giving, committed to the cause, committed to coming? Because I guess it's a higher level, but it's like multi-level marketing, right? Because you've got to keep the team motivated at all times.
You have.
Because like everything, it can fizzle out.
It can. It's not a registration process to become a member. It's an application process. And part of that application process is that you are invited to apply once we've gone through and had a conversation. So
As we did.
As we did. So as we get into that...
So you were filtering me, or you were actually going through the process of whether but I felt it was just a conversation.
Yes.
Naughty man.
But the conversation is not sinister.
Yeah, and it's not interview.
It's not interview, but it's just listening to that person, and you are all about giving.
Yes.
And you said to me, I'm not too bothered about taking anything away, but I want to be able to give back.
Sure.
That's the mindset we're looking for. If everyone comes to the table with that giving mindset, abundance, they will naturally take stuff away as well.
Do you find that the peer group become friends?
Yes.
Interesting.
And you'll find that as the board grows, there are people that are getting a lot of traction already, and they're getting a lot of responses positively in their business already, and you can see some of those relationships starting to form.
Because you meet once a month, but the communication goes on in between the month.
It does, and that's where the Alpha Group sort of has that distinct difference between other groups that offer peer-to-peer.
So where are you going with the Alpha Group? Because you've been doing it for a short period of time. You've got one group, chapter, what is it called, a group?
It's called an Alpha Group board, yes.
A board.
Yeah. So
do you have a vision of having a number of boards, number of groups?
I would like, my vision at the moment is to get 3 boards going. Okay. And I think there's a lot of work involved in making those happen. Yes. So if I could actually have 3 boards of 10 people, so I'm making a difference on the boards of 30 people, how many lives am I helping to impact through the number of employees and the families? That's,
I worked out, we actually have through our work here in my company, we affect over 500 people.
Yeah.
Directly through salaries. Amazing.
It is amazing.
These are children, women that we don't know, people's lives all over the world.
It's very powerful.
Literally in Africa, in Southeast Asia, Central Asia.
It's amazing.
Europe.
Yeah. So that's what the Alpha Group provides me, a platform to help people and scale the number of people I can actually impact without even knowing them directly.
And the individuals in the group can be themselves. They don't have to fit within a criteria. They don't get medals and badges and bring a guest in. There's no pressure, no nothing.
No.
The only thing is you're conscious helping each other out, caring for the member in the group.
Absolutely. So we start with a recap on what somebody took away from the mastermind in the previous board and how they've applied that in their business.
So they have to be a little bit accountable. They have to be to the group.
That's where the Alpha Group is the differentiator. Accountability. So what you commit to taking away in this board, you agree to start implementing that from this afternoon. You're leaving the board at lunchtime. You're going to start applying this in your business this afternoon.
Amazing.
And you've got accountability partners that will hold you to that account and those actions across the whole month. So when you come back, you've committed to your board of members that you'll come back and you'll share what you've agreed to take away.
Even if you did it and it didn't work out, share it with the group.
Yes. So what could I do differently? And this is where the promise of growing the value of your business, at least doubling it within 2 to 3 years, because that accountability of taking it from the board. So it's not just getting together for a couple of hours once a month. You're actually working on your business. You're investing time in yourself, on your business.
I noticed that there's, personally speaking now, in the group there's several people that I know their businesses, right? And in previous to even getting to know that they're in the Alpha Group, I felt I could really help them out with creativity and marketing and stuff. Is this something that I should not do in the group because I'm that enthusiastic and I want to help? Or are you with me? And they've never met me before. I join and it's like this guy going, hey, I've got an idea and you can do this, you can do that. Do they think, what the hell is this guy on? Or do you suggest that we should hold back and build relationships? And what do you think?
That's not what the Alpha Group sets out to achieve. However, it will come.
That's my character. I'm very enthusiastic. I'm just jumping in and help people now.
I can see that happening in the breaks, but when we're quite
structured.
I'll say we're very structured actually. Okay, so we start with the workbooks. We'll be all working on a fast growth strategy when we go into the board first thing in the morning. We'll then break, have a coffee, 15 minutes, and then get back. And then we'll do a mastermind. So if somebody comes to the board and presents their mastermind, so they have an issue that they're facing within their business, and it's causing them sleepless nights. Okay. Let's face it, business owners have that, right?
All the time.
So they come and they have the awareness that they can share that within a safe environment. The board members then will ask them questions to get deeper clarity around what they believe that issue to be. And then they will present...
Collectively.
Yes. And you know what? Sometimes that in itself, just having a room full of people asking you questions around your issue is enough to create a shift.
These are all leaders, right?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And
quite intimidating, really.
It's
because
very
my
tough.
peer group is me.
Yeah.
Friends, none.
No.
Acquaintances, many. Right? To be in a room full of similar-minded people with the same problems, same challenges, or they've faced them before, it's really quite intimidating.
But where that mindset comes in of wanting to give, you know that the intent is always
good.
Positive, it's always good. Yeah.
Wow.
And then if the questioning alone is not enough to sort of steer you into the right path, what the board would then present as possible solutions is just mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. So if somebody comes with a marketing or sales query, I know that you'd be like a machine gun, coming up with
that. Not necessarily in every meeting.
No,
it's within a structured the parameters of the business.
Yeah.
But if you have a chat over the coffee and somebody asks because they think that's your expertise, then you're willing to do so.
Indeed.
Okay. Because the last thing I want to do in the first meeting, I've certainly want to step on toes.
No, I don't think that would be the case at all. And let's face it, if anyone can get any tips or insights around sales and marketing that's going to enhance their business, I'm sure they're going to receive that widely and with open arms. But the Alpha Group is an amazing concept and allowing us to do that. And the Alpha Group is just under 10 years old now, and we've got a footprint in 24 countries.
I'm actually very impressed by it, and it's not an advertising, because I've actually decided to join, and I'm looking forward to our first meeting. What I liked is the Napoleon Hill peer group.
Yes.
You know, was it the Firestone? Was it Firestone, Edison, and Ford?
Yes.
They were the same peer group. They went together, they meditated together, and no coincidence, they all became billionaires.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Really, really powerful.
From Think and Grow Rich.
Exactly. Exactly.
And again, if you think about that book, and if your viewers and listeners have not read that book, it's probably one of the best reads you could ever invest your time in.
Yes, it's the first book you've got to read if you're into personal development.
Yeah. And but when I read that book, so many things fell into place for me that I've been doing without realizing it.
Yes.
And just if you don't have that peer group and you sort of create a peer group in your mind, that whole mastermind, and you ask your visionary peer,
they have the answers.
They have the answers. But when you have a room full of people that have those answers, by the tens of potential solutions, I've never left a board yet without my hair tingling. Did
you have to bring hair into this subject?
Sorry.
Please. Hair tends to be a very sensitive subject to me. Yeah.
Sorry.
The hair on your back.
Yeah,
that's right.
But is that intense in terms of the wow factor?
Do you get to meet? Is it like I know there's different boards and different meetings happening. Do you get to meet the other people on the different boards in different cities, or no? You don't.
Yes.
You do.
Layla, who
contacted me first.
Yeah. Layla is up in Abu Dhabi. Layla Adbi, a lovely lady. She's running her own board in Abu Dhabi, and I was at her board last week, and we've launched 2 more boards this week in Dubai.
So you're free to travel. You're free to
travel. We provide that again.
So the other boards opening in Dubai.
Yes.
Wow,
we have that abundance mindset. So the regional directors, we are looking to help as many business owners as we can. So the more boards we can create, the more we are on target to help the Alpha Group in their quest.
Do you do like educational seminars where they all get together and somebody does a talk on certain things and like personal development?
Have we done them as yet? No.
It's too early.
I think now is probably the right time to start thinking about those. Once I think we get the summer rush over and we get to the back end of August and September starts creeping in, I'm going to look to do some more of those, because I think getting people interested by showing what they can achieve as being part of such a board, I think is going to be very powerful.
Well, we've got to have about, I think, over 50,000 viewers and listeners. So I would love you to tell the audience how, if they're interested, they can get hold of yourself or the Alpha Group, or yourself in regard to any form of consulting, personal analysis, leadership, How can they get hold of you now?
Contact me via email. I think it was probably the
And
best.
your email addresses.
Is-
We're going to have a text at the bottom
Yeah.
of the end of this conversation. But please enlighten us.
It's Darren@uniqueconsulting.com.
Unique spelled.
YOUNIQUE consulting.com. So
Perfect.
Darren, DARREN @uniqueconsulting.com. Or just go to uniqueconsulting.com on the website and just message me from there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Pretty active on LinkedIn. You're, I think, more active on LinkedIn than I am.
Well, the thing is, I have a team who manages it, so they're very active. But the problem is, when I actually look at some of the answers they write, I'm like, I never talk like that.
No.
So
no.
I just sometimes I'm very courteous, no matter how busy I am.
Yes.
And if somebody's saying, I own a digital company, and I'm not joking, 80% of the emails I get is sending me digital services. And my staff ignore it or delete it. But I always reply.
Yeah.
I say, if you really want my attention, read my profile.
Yes, yeah, I know.
Don't just mass email me, hey, do you want a better website?
Yeah.
If you actually looked at my profile, you see that I have a website company. It really frustrates me
I know.
that companies have invested in these people to mass email crap to them.
Yeah. And to them, it's just a volume game. It's just numbers.
It is.
Just
Machine
numbers.
gun and hopefully one hits.
Yeah.
How sad is that? And I see that as a prospect that for me, to actually go to them and say, hey, do you know your salespeople are doing this? I'm too busy now. But before, that's how I made my money. I see somebody tripping, I'll go and say, hey, you got a pain, and I've got the asprin. So
Yeah.
that was my 20-second pitch, elevator pitch.
Fix the pain.
Yeah. They asked me, what do you do? I said, I sell aspirin. Yeah. So what do you mean? I said, well, I'll find your headache and I'll fix it for you. Yeah. So it's an absolute pleasure. I hope you enjoyed the last 2 hours.
Has it been 2 hours? It hasn't
Over
felt like
2 hours. Over 2
Wow.
hours. I would love to have you on board again, maybe
love
in
to.
a few months, because we've had the Alpha board on the go, and I want to talk about and share with the audience my successes. And I'd love to get your feedback from this and grow this together if that's possible.
I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great to come and just have a chat with you. And as I say, it doesn't feel like anywhere near 2 hours.
Yeah,
So-
I really enjoyed it. It's called a fireside chat, so hopefully you
Yeah.
felt that way. But you know, more than anything else, I respect you so much because of the current position you're in, and I know you got a lot of other priorities, and you made time to come here. And I really respect you, I appreciate you, and I thank God that you're in my life right now.
Likewise, I feel the same. So thank you. I truly believe that sometimes people are meant to come into your life at certain times, and when we met, I think that was the right time.
I think we're going to be very powerful together. I really can't wait to work with you.
We've both been in Dubai for a number of years. Why have we not met before?
Yes,
I think now is the right time.
it is, really is. Absolute pleasure.
Dariush, thanks so much.
Thank
It's
you
been a
so
real pleasure.
much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your
Yeah,
time as
thank
well,
you
as
so much.
always. God bless. Thank you.